cafeteria smelled like industrial cleaner and yesterday's meatloaf when I heard my daughter's voice cut through the lunch crowd. "She's just the cleaner," Tessa said, and her friends burst out laughing. I was wiping down a table 3 feet away, my yellow rubber gloves still dripping soapy water. The rag fell from my hand. Every muscle in my body locked up as I turned and saw her pointing at me, her face twisted in something that looked like disgust. My own daughter. The girl I'd raised alone for 16 years was staring at me like I was invisible, like I was nothing. Her friends followed her finger, their eyes landing on me with that particular brand of teenage cruelty that cuts deeper than any knife. One of them, a girl with perfect blonde highlights, wrinkled her nose. I tried to smile, tried to pretend my heart wasn't shattering into 1,000 pieces right there on the linoleum floor. But my hands started shaking, and I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. "Does she, clean your house too?" the blonde girl asked, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. The whole table erupted in laughter again. Another girl chimed in. "At least you'll never have to worry about college debt, Tessa. Free maid service for life." I watched my daughter's face, waiting for her to defend me, to tell them to shut up, to do anything except what she actually did. Nothing. She just looked down at her lunch tray and smiled this small, embarrassed smile that told me everything I needed to know. She was ashamed of me. I picked up my rag with trembling fingers and finished wiping the table they were sitting at. "Enjoy your lunch, girls," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake, even though everything inside me was breaking. I walked toward the supply closet with my head up, my back straight, even though I could hear them still laughing behind me. "My name is Marlene Holt. I'm 42 years old, and yes, I'm the school cleaner at Riverside High. But that wasn't always my story. 6 years ago, I was a project coordinator at an environmental consulting firm in downtown Portland. I had an office with a window, business cards with raised lettering, and a salary that let me dream about family vacations and retirement accounts. Then my husband walked out on us without warning, leaving behind a mountain of debt I didn't know existed and a daughter who needed stability more than I needed pride. Consulting firm went under 3 months after he left, and suddenly I was a single mother with no job and bills I couldn't pay. When the position opened up at Tessa's school, I took it without hesitation. I told myself honest work was honest work, that there was dignity in keeping things clean and functioning. The drive home that afternoon was thick with silence. Tessa sat in the passenger seat of our old Honda, her phone glued to her face, her thumbs flying across the screen. I gripped the steering wheel and stared at the road ahead. "You embarrassed me today," she finally said, not looking up from her phone. My knuckles went white on the wheel. I turned my head slowly to look at her. "I embarrassed you?" I asked. She shrugged, still not meeting my eyes. "Everyone knows you work there, Mom. You don't have to be so visible about it." Something shifted in my chest then, something cold and sharp. I smiled just a little. "Okay," I said softly. "We'll see about that." She didn't notice the change in my tone. She went back to texting her friends, probably laughing about me some more. But I noticed. I felt it settle into my bones like concrete hardening. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment in the cafeteria over and over. Around 2 in the morning, I got up and pulled an old cardboard box from the top shelf of my closet. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were my diplomas, my professional certifications, letters of recommendation from previous employers. I ran my fingers over the embossed seal on my bachelor's degree in business administration. Under that was my master's in operations management, the one I'd finished online while pregnant with Tessa. I'd forgotten how much I'd accomplished before everything fell apart. Then I saw something else in the box, a printed email I'd saved from 6 months ago. The subject line read, "Riverside School District seeking operations manager." I deleted it without even reading the full description because I'd thought, who would take me seriously? Monday morning, I arrived at school an hour early. I found Principal Warren in his office, buried under paperwork and looking miserable. "Coffee?" I offered, holding up the cup I'd brought him from the teacher's lounge. He looked up, surprised. Marlene, you're here early. I set the coffee on his desk and noticed the chaos, budget reports scattered everywhere, maintenance requests piled high, supply orders marked urgent. Need help organizing those? I asked. He laughed, but it was exhausted. Unless you've got a degree in miracle working. I smiled. Just good at systems. If you want, I could stay late this week and help sort through the backlog. He studied me for a moment, really looked at me, maybe for the first time since I'd started working there. You'd do that? I nodded. People notice what they can't ignore, Principal Warren. I'm making sure you notice me. He didn't understand what I meant, not yet. Over the next 2 weeks, I became indispensable. I reorganized the supply closets using a digital inventory system I built on a free app. I fixed the scheduling conflicts that had maintenance workers and custodians tripping over each other. I created a streamlined system for teachers to submit maintenance requests that actually got addressed. Teachers started greeting me by name in the hallways. Marlene, thank God you're here, became a phrase I heard daily. One afternoon, I was mopping near the administrative offices when I overheard 2 school board members talking. The superintendent wants someone internal for the operations position, one said. Someone who knows the building inside and out. My heart started pounding. Kept mopping, but I was listening to every word. Has to be someone reliable, the other one added. Someone the staff actually respects. They were describing me. They just didn't know it yet. At home, the distance between Tessa and me grew wider. She stopped talking to me about school, about her friends, about anything that mattered. She'd come home, go straight to her room, and stay there until dinner. Even then, she ate quickly and disappeared again. One night, she came downstairs wearing expensive designer shoes I definitely hadn't bought her. Where did you get those? I asked. She didn't even look at me. Megan's mom bought them for me. She felt bad that I had to wear cheap stuff. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. I set down my fork carefully. You'll return those tomorrow. Her head snapped up. What? No. I looked her dead in the eyes. Yes, you will. Because you're going to learn that people's worth isn't measured by what they wear or what they do for a living. I met Catherine Dalton during a late evening cleaning shift. She was the senior English teacher, 63 years old and sharp as a tack. She'd been there the day Tessa humiliated me in the cafeteria. I was emptying trash cans in her classroom when she spoke. I saw what happened last week, she said quietly. With your daughter. I froze, my hand on the trash bag. I've worked here 30 years, she continued. I've seen a lot of talented women get overlooked because they were too quiet, too humble, or doing work people considered beneath them. She stood up and walked over to me. You applied for that operations position, didn't you? I stared at her. How did you know? She smiled. Because I would have. And because I've been watching you reorganize this entire school system like a chess master for the last month. She paused. You're going to need allies for what comes next. Catherine became my secret weapon. She knew every political minefield in the district, every board member's pet issue, every teacher's complaint that had gone ignored for years. During our coffee breaks, she'd fill me in on the internal politics. Principal Warren is terrified of the superintendent, she told me. But the superintendent respects data and efficiency above everything else. I filed that information away. Catherine helped me document every improvement I'd made, every dollar I'd saved the school with better supply management, every maintenance issue I'd resolved before it became a crisis. We built a portfolio of evidence that was impossible to ignore. They're going to fight you, Catherine warned. The principal's already pushing his golf buddy for the position. I nodded. Then we make sure they can't justify choosing anyone else. I submitted my application on a Tuesday night at 11:47 p.m. The backlash started within days. I heard the whispers in the hallways, saw the smirks on certain teachers' faces. "Did you hear the janitor applied for administration?" one teacher said loud enough for me to hear. Even Tessa caught wind of it. She came home furious one afternoon, slamming the front door so hard the windows rattled. "Could you just not?" she screamed at me. "Everyone's talking about how you applied for some big important job you're never going to get." I was folding laundry on the couch. I set down the shirt I was holding and looked at her calmly. "You're embarrassed now," I said. "But one day you're going to tell people I'm your mother with pride." She laughed, but it was bitter. "That'll never happen." I smiled sadly. "We'll see." She stormed upstairs, and I went back to folding clothes, my hands steady even though my heart was aching. 2 weeks after I submitted my application, I got called in for an interview. The superintendent himself was there, along with 3 board members. They sat on one side of a long conference table, and I sat on the other, acutely aware that I was wearing my nicest dress, which was 6 years old and slightly faded. Superintendent Collins leaned back in his chair and studied me. "Your application surprised us, Mrs. Holt," he said. I met his eyes steadily. "I like to surprise people, Dr. Collins." One of the board members, a woman named Patricia Simmons, flipped through my portfolio. "This efficiency data is impressive. You're saying you reduced supply costs by 18% in 3 months?" I nodded. "And maintenance response time by 40%. They exchanged glances. The interview lasted 45 minutes. When it was over, Dr. Collins stood and shook my hand. "We'll be in touch." I walked out of that office with my head high. But then nothing happened. A week passed. Then 2. I learned through Catherine that Principal Warren was actively campaigning against me, pushing hard for his friend Marcus Reynolds, who had management experience but had never set foot in Riverside High. "He's telling the board you don't have leadership experience," Catherine said, her voice tight with anger. I felt something in my chest deflate. Maybe I'd been foolish to think I had a chance. That night I almost cried. Instead, I called Catherine. "Then we make it impossible for them to ignore the data," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" We worked late into the night, compiling reports, gathering testimonials from teachers, documenting everything. Catherine had connections on the board. She knew how to get information into the right hands without fingerprints. Within a week, my efficiency reports were being discussed in board meetings. Then Tessa did something that changed everything. A video started circulating among the students, one of those cruel social media posts that teenagers think are funny until they're not. It showed Tessa and her friends mocking one of the cafeteria workers, imitating her accent, laughing at the way she walked. The video went viral within the school, and by the next morning the administration was involved. Principal Warren called me in, his face grave. "Your daughter is facing suspension," he said. Tessa was sitting in the chair next to me, her face red and tear-streaked. "Mom, please," she whispered. "Fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not the cruel teenager who'd called me just the cleaner but the scared little girl underneath. I turned to Principal Warren. What if she does community service? Works in the cafeteria herself for the next month? Watching Tessa serve food in the cafeteria, wearing the same hairnet and apron as the woman she'd mocked, was bittersweet. She hated every second of it. But I saw something else too. I saw her talking to Mrs. Chen, the cafeteria worker from the video, saw them eventually sharing a laugh. I saw her start to understand, slowly, painfully, what it meant to be on the other side. One afternoon, she came home exhausted, smelling like French fries and dishwater. "It's hard," she said quietly, sitting at the kitchen table. I poured her a glass of water. "Yes," I agreed. "That's the point." She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than contempt in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "For what I said. For everything." I sat down across from her. "Then show me. Show everyone." The weeks that followed brought an unexpected shift. Teachers who'd heard about my interview started asking my opinion on school issues. The maintenance staff came to me first when problems arose, not to administration. I was still officially just the cleaner, but the reality was different. I was running things, making decisions, solving problems that had plagued the school for years. Catherine kept me updated on the board deliberations. "There's a faction pushing for you now," she said. "The data is too strong to ignore. But Warren's still fighting." I nodded. I'd learned patience in ways I never expected. Every time I mopped a floor or emptied a trash can, I reminded myself that dignity wasn't in the job title. It was in how you did the work. And I was doing exceptional work. In March, Dr. Collins came to the school unannounced. I was fixing a broken water fountain, my hands covered in grease, when he walked up. "Mrs. Holt," he said. I straightened, wiping my hands on a rag. "Dr. Collins." He looked at the water fountain, now working perfectly. "You fixed that?" I nodded. Maintenance was backlogged. Students needed water. He studied me for a long moment. "Walk with me." We walked through the hallways and he asked me questions, real questions about systems and efficiency and what I'd change if I had authority. I answered honestly, pulling from years of experience he didn't know I had. When we reached the main office, he turned to me. "The board meets next week to make a final decision." My heart hammered. "I know." He smiled slightly. "Just thought you should know that." Then he walked away. The announcement would be made at the spring assembly, a big event where the whole school gathered in the gymnasium. Catherine told me this in confidence, her eyes gleaming with something that looked like victory. "They're announcing it publicly," she said. "That means they've made their choice." I felt my stomach drop. "Do you know?" She shook her head. "No. But I have a feeling." The night before the assembly, I could barely sleep. I kept thinking about Tessa's face in the cafeteria that day, the shame and mockery in her expression. I thought about every floor I'd mopped, every toilet I'd scrubbed, every moment of invisible work. I'd stopped being invisible weeks ago, but tomorrow would seal it. Either I'd be validated in front of everyone who doubted me, or I'd be humiliated in the same cafeteria where my daughter had tried to erase me. The morning of the assembly, I woke up at 5 a.m. I showered, dried my hair carefully, and pulled out the navy blue suit I'd bought from a consignment shop the week before. Fit perfectly, professional and dignified. I put on minimal makeup and simple earrings. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the woman I used to be, the one who'd walked into conference rooms and commanded respect. I drove to school in silence, my hands steady on the wheel. Tessa was already there, she'd taken the bus. I parked in my usual spot in the employee lot and sat in my car for 5 minutes, breathing deeply. "Whatever happens," I told my reflection, "you've already won. You've already proven who you are." Then I got out of the car and walked toward my future. The gymnasium was packed. Students filled the bleachers, hundreds of teenagers talking and laughing. Teachers lined the walls. I stood near the side door in my navy suit, watching everything. I saw Tessa sitting with her friends in the front section, her phone in her hand, oblivious. Principal Warren stood on the stage looking uncomfortable. Dr. Collins stood next to him, holding a microphone. Catherine caught my eye from across the gym and gave me the smallest nod. The assembly began with announcements, the usual administrative updates that teenagers ignored. Then Dr. Collins stepped forward. "We have some important news to share today," he said, his voice carrying through the speakers. The chatter died down. "As many of you know, we've been searching for a new head of school operations." My heart started pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "This position requires someone who understands our school intimately," Dr. Collins continued. "Someone who has demonstrated exceptional organizational skills, financial acumen, and dedication to our students and staff." I saw Tessa shift in her seat, still not paying attention. Someone who has been here, day in and day out, making improvements that many of you probably never noticed but that have made all our lives easier. Now a few students were looking around, confused. Teachers were whispering. It is my pleasure to announce that our new head of school operations, effective immediately, is Mrs. Marlene Holt. The gymnasium went completely silent. I saw Tessa's head snap up, her eyes wide. I saw her mouth fall open. I saw her phone slip from her hand and clatter onto the floor. I walked onto the stage. Not in a custodian's uniform, but in my suit. The applause started slowly, then built. Teachers were clapping, some of them standing. Students looked confused, then started clapping too. I reached Dr. Collins and he shook my hand firmly. "Congratulations, Mrs. Holt," he said, loud enough for the microphone to catch. I looked out at the sea of faces. I found Tessa in the crowd. Her face was white, her eyes huge. Her friends were staring at her, then at me, then back at her. I saw the exact moment the realization hit her fully, the moment she understood what had just happened. I smiled at her. "Hi, sweetheart," I said softly, knowing she couldn't hear me but knowing she'd see my lips move. The assembly continued, but I barely heard it. I was watching my daughter's face, watching her struggle to process what she was seeing. Later, I'd learn that was the moment everything changed for her too. After the assembly, I walked through the hallways to my new office, a real office with a desk and a computer and a nameplate that read Marlene Holt, Operations Manager. Principal Warren appeared in my doorway within minutes, his face flushed. "Congratulations," he said stiffly. "Thank you, Principal Warren," I replied, sitting behind my desk for the first time. "I'll need to review the current operations budget by next week. I noticed some inefficiencies that need addressing immediately." His jaw tightened. Every person who'd whispered about the janitor applying above her station now had to answer to me. Every teacher who'd ignored me had to see me in meetings. Every student who'd laughed at my daughter's cruelty had to watch me walk these halls with authority. But the real victory wasn't professional. It was waiting for me at home. That evening, Tessa came home late. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still in my suit, working on my laptop. She stood in the doorway, her backpack sliding off her shoulder. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice small. I looked up from my screen. "Tell you what?" That you could." She couldn't finish the sentence. I closed my laptop and faced her fully. "'Cause I wanted you to see me for who I am, not what I do. I wanted you to learn that every person you meet deserves respect, regardless of their job title." Tears were streaming down her face now. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I stood up and walked over to her. For the first time in months, I pulled her into a hug. She collapsed against me, sobbing. "Then show me," I said softly. "Show everyone. Be better than you were." 3 months later, I walked through the hallways of Riverside High with a tablet in my hand, reviewing facility reports. The floors were clean, maintained now by a new custodial staff I'd hired and trained properly. I'd implemented changes that made everyone's lives easier, teachers, students, staff. The school ran like a well-oiled machine. I passed the cafeteria and saw Tessa inside, volunteering during her lunch period. She was helping Mrs. Chen serve food, both of them laughing at something. When Tessa saw me, she waved, her face bright and proud. I waved back, feeling something warm and complete settle in my chest. That afternoon, a reporter from the local paper came to interview me for a story about women in school administration. "What's the most important lesson you've learned?" she asked. I thought about that day in the cafeteria, about the rag falling from my hand, about my daughter's shame. "That the sweetest victory isn't proving others wrong," I said. "It's quietly, consistently proving yourself right."